Hey, Dr. Alan Christensen here with you. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours Live. So good to be with you all. We're coming up on the holidays pretty quickly here. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, welcome for the first time. I see a lot of folks jumping on right now. I'm with you guys on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube Live. And these are a lot of fun. You know, it's all about just helping make sense out of things for you. Maybe you've got questions yourself. Maybe there's other ones that you want to hear and pick some things up from. Either way, it's okay. Love to hear where you're from. And if there are things that you are struggling with, I don't know about a lot of stuff, but there's some things I know a lot about. And that's really hormones, endocrinology, thyroid, and relevant concerns. So fatigue, weight loss, blood sugar, things along those lines. So yeah, welcome. And I'm seeing a lot of you all come on right now. We always ask for top questions that people can send in beforehand. And I've got a few of those that I'll start with, and I'll keep an eye open for those that are coming in as well. And we'll get some of both. Okay, just adjusting the screens here. Yeah. So one that came in, this was a really good one. Here we go. This was about funny thing. So Karen asked, in an article you wrote about iodine in pregnancy, you listed canned navy beans as a yellow light food. Is this only if it contains salt, or all navy beans yellow light, even dry? Does this apply to other beans or just navy? So good question, Karen. And it's good because it's really illustrative. So if you're newer here to my work, the cliff notes of this are that people who are prone to thyroid disease are generally less tolerant of too much iodine. Iodine's not bad. People can get thyroid disease by just being exposed to super high amounts, but more common than not, they're exposed to amounts that aren't that crazy, but they have a lower tolerance to iodine. They can be affected by amounts that wouldn't affect other people. And the exciting part is if they get below a certain level, they can often reverse thyroid disease by controlling their iodine. So really cool. And in the thyroid reset diet, I've talked a lot about different food sources and how much iodine various foods contain. And some of these you can make simple rules and principles, and others are very different from one to the next. So in some cases, there's a few things that are unexpected. I'm seeing a lot of you all come on. Welcome. Hey, Joanne, good to see you. We got Aisha with us here too. Many others on the different platforms. And yeah, good to be with everyone. Now, canned navy beans. Here's the thing, you guys. There are some weird things, and this is why I worked really hard to get a comprehensive food list. The nice thing is that any food category you can think of, there's a lot of low iodine food options. So when you're out to really heal your thyroid and reset it and help it work better again, you don't have to give up everything. There's many popular diets that are quite restrictive, and even independent of their merits, it's a tough thing to cut out a lot of foods. I acknowledge that. The thyroid reset diet, though, it's based on clinical studies that reversed thyroid disease for the vast majority of participants, like 70 to 80% of people within 8 to 12 weeks. So really quick. And when I went deep in writing the book, I wanted to find the sources that were really high and those that were moderate and those that were low. And I worked hard because I wanted there to be a lot of options, and there really are. So canned navy beans, oddly enough, there was a couple of assays that showed them rather high in iodine. It's not inherent to navy beans. A lot of foods that are made with salt aren't really a problem, but there's a few specific outliers like that. And yeah, those are there in that list. One or two other things that were really weird. Prune juice had a few assays that was high in iodine. Frozen cantaloupe, really bizarre, a few things you wouldn't expect. But there's also a lot of good foods that in all categories that are lower in that. So yeah, curious thing. I'm seeing a lot of good questions coming in here now, and we'll talk about some of those as well. Sandy's with us on YouTube, and she just asked if she can get a thyroid transplant. And Sandy's saying iodine is a scam. That's curious. So Sandy, if you want to expand upon the scam part, the body needs it, not a bad thing. We need some. Not sure what you mean by it being a scam though. So a thyroid transplant, she mentioned that. I wanted to address that because there have been studies actually. There was no human studies to date just yet, uh, I'm sorry, there was one limited one, but there has been data suggesting that not a transplant per se, but stem cells could cause regrowth of thyroid tissue. Now, the drawback about that is if the autoimmunity has not been addressed, the new thyroid tissue could go away again. And in theory, that could happen with a transplant as well. So if autoimmunity could be really reversed, now a tricky thing is that autoimmunity is not just thyroid antibodies, but otherwise the idea of a transplant or stem cell regrowth, there's actually some work going on around that, and pretty encouraging stuff. Oh, and Sandy is a man. Yep, my assumption, Sandy, my apologies. And I'm just curious about the iodine is a scam comment. I don't quite get that. Lexi's with us as well over on YouTube. Good to see you back again, Lexi. Okay, so we got Cynthia here with us as well. A lot of folks coming on. Uh, okay, let me grab a few more of these that were sent in beforehand. Let's see. This is one. This was an easy one from Gene, kind of a fun one. Goofy, but I've never had miso. I wanted to try it. Is there a brand or type that is iodine free? Any recommendations? What is the flavor like? Thanks. Yeah, Gene, great question. So miso, it is a fermented soy product. Soy foods have had a lot of, I don't know, a lot of strong emotions about them being really bad or whatnot, or superfoods or whatnot. There's pretty good evidence that they are good sources of protein and that they can benefit hot flashes and night sweats and lower the risk for breast cancer. Pretty clear data on that. Also helpful for bone health, which someone else was just asking about. Uh, the fermented versions are especially nice because they can have the benefit of acting like probiotics and benefiting the bowel flora. So pretty cool in a lot of ways. Miso, what does miso taste like? Probably the closest thing would be soy sauce, but nowhere near as intense of a flavor, a much more rich, complex flavor. And as far as iodine, not a big factor for miso itself. Now, there are some miso mixes that will include dashi, dashi, and dashi is a dried fish extract. And that would be more of a concern as far as the iodine, but straight miso itself, really not. Gene, hit one of your better health food stores, and what you want to find, you'll find like a tub, like a plastic tub, probably about 8 to 12 ounces, maybe 14 ounces, and it's kind of a brownish paste. Imagine imagine like peanut butter, but not quite as homogenized, but about that color. Some are a little darker, some are a little lighter. And the best way to use it is take a couple tablespoons, mix it in with some hot water, and drop a few scallions on top. Got a pretty good version of miso soup. Some of the traditional ones that are served will also add in dashi or other flavorings, but you can do great with miso and hot water. It's kind of like a broth or a beef base, kind of, not exactly. And I just saw Gene pop on, so yeah, Gene, just answer your question about the miso. Be sure and catch that replay. I talked about that, but good stuff. Nice flavor and quite flexible. So that's a great way to use it by itself. It works really well along with some tahini, a few drops of sesame oil as a sauce, or for cooking fish with. I love to bake fish and just coat it with a real light layer of miso beforehand, especially one of the lower iodine versions like rockfish or even squid steaks. But really, really useful stuff. Okay, I'm going to bounce back and forth. A lot of folks here. Good to see you guys. Good to see everyone today. And a lot of good live questions coming in too. So I want to really alternate between some of the live ones and some of the ones that were sent in beforehand. Lexi had one. I just got fully off NP thyroid, and my doctor said my tests are normal. TSH at 3.9. 66, but it's been taken longer. He was on thyroid for 4 years. Lexi, that's really cool. And here's a really important point I want everyone to hear about. The idea that when you're on thyroid meds, that you're on them for life, you can't come off and you can't change. It's just not true. Now, there's arguments about TSH scores that are normal, that are optimal, and the distinction between normal and optimal is mostly a distinction for those who need to remain on medication. And it's true, if someone's on medication and needs to be, they might feel better if their TSH on the lower side. But when someone's TSH, like Alexi is now at 3.9, especially 66 years old, there's no data saying that Lexi will benefit her health by adding thyroid medication to her regime. There's a big difference between when would someone benefit by starting medicine versus when should someone adjust the medicine they need to be on. And yeah, that's very different. Another thing too, Lexi, I don't know the timing of when your test was and when you finished the medication, but it can be 3, 6, 9 months before you reach a full steady state again. So you may see your TSH improve even further now with some more time passed. That's great. That's all really good news. Okay, I'm going to grab a few more that were sent in advance here. I mentioned the one about miso. Here was a great one that we had about hormone testing. So definitely another great topic, just hormones, endocrinology, testosterone, estrogen, also things in my wheelhouse. Uh, Car- Carrie Ashcraft was asking the best way to test hormones. I know Dutch is great, but what's the best way to test that's covered by insurance? Blood, saliva, et cetera. Thank you. Yeah, great question. And you hear a lot of different answers about this, but with testing, part of the part of the answer has to come down, of course, to accuracy, but another part is something like the network effect. So, you know, like Craigslist, a lot of folks use Craigslist because a lot of folks use Craigslist. And same thing for other versions of social media. They're useful because a lot of people are on them. And so hormone tests and medical tests in general, this is also true. So tests are accurate and helpful when they're used by a lot of people. So the more a test has been used historically by people who are healthy or not in various ways, and at different ages, the more we know where scores should be found, the more we know what abnormal scores look like. So because of that, that's one factor why blood tests have a big advantage. They've been used by a lot more people for quite a bit longer. Now, hormones are in different parts of your body. They're in the saliva, they're in the blood, they're in the urine, but they're doing different things in all those places. In the body where they're active in some places more than others. Estrogen is more active in the skin, the breasts, the uterine lining, not as active in muscle tissue, for example. So, in a perfect world, we would have some way to assay the hormones in different tissues and measure their quantity in those tissues and their biological activity. Lacking that, probably our closest proxy really would be blood. So, the blood can contain the hormone in an active state and in circulation. The urine does contain the hormones, however, it's what's left over. So after the body has done all that it can to circulate and utilize the hormone, it gets rid of something at the very end. That's what we see in the urine. It's not the biologically active fraction that's present. And saliva does contain some hormones, but what's different about it is that it only contains one fraction of hormone, and it only contains hormones of a certain chemical size. So hormones are molecules, some are bigger than others. The ones that are really big do not get into the saliva in very high quantities. And then also some hormones stick to red blood cells. And in those cases, the amount of hormone in the red blood cell can be a lot higher. And we always get some random amount of red blood cells in our saliva. When you crunch all that together, the relevance is that cortisol can be accurately measured in saliva, other hormones not so much. So urine tests, such as the Dutch test, are hormone end products, and they don't tell you nothing about hormones, but they're not really saying the active level of hormones. They're the active level plus the inactive stuff, but it's after the body's used them up. It's not the forms that are circulating and active. Blood tests, their shortcoming is hormones are not used the same way in all tissues. They're used differently in different tissues of the body. So but all together, blood tests are the closest to representing what's active, what the body's really doing. And they also have the advantage of being covered by insurance. The disadvantage of requiring a blood draw, there's that. But yeah, Carrie, blood tests are a better way to go. Another consideration is the timing of tests is important. That's a separate one, but I've talked before about the timing of thyroid tests. There's a lot of things of the timing of hormone tests as well. Uh, in the case of estrogen, progesterone especially, they vary tremendously throughout the course of a woman's menstrual cycle. Okay, so another thing about office hours, I'd love to take topics to a deeper level that we probably would come across otherwise. So I'd love to get follow-up questions. I would like to get ones that relate to topics we've already discussed. We can go deeper in those. Christine is saying on day of blood work, let me just read this back, I gotta move a window. Should or shouldn't I take the medication? Yeah, Christine, so this is a great one. The default answer I give is you should not. The reason for that is the medication will absorb pretty rapidly in your bloodstream. And over the next 1 to 12 hours, the levels of thyroid hormone are being affected strongly by the pill that you just took. The calibration of the labs, what they call normal, is based on a trough level. So we have a peak and a trough, a high point and a low point. And the high point is somewhere in that 2 to 10, 12 hours after you take a dose. The low point is 24 hours after you've taken a dose. Now, there are some times where good doctors will want someone to test after they've taken a pill. And they do that for reasons that are not to find a precise amount, but to check more so absorption. The difficulty with trying to be accurate about it is that even for the same person, even the same amount of time after taking a pill, the blood levels will not be the same. We call that intra-subject variability. And papers have shown that the same person, if they're in that same window of 3 hours after a pill, they could be here one time and there the other time. That's not true for all pills, but it is true for thyroid hormones. So that was long, but Christine, better to do the blood test before you take the pill for that day. And best for your doctor to be aware of it. A really common issue with that one is that someone will take a medication that contains T3, like natural thyroid, and they'll measure their T3 levels. And they'll test after they've taken their tablet. And their T3 levels are really high, and someone will panic about that. But all their other markers suggest that it's not too high, and it's really just an artifact. So yeah, great question. Okay, so follow-up comments, related ones. Lexi, I don't want to neglect to say that I could not have de-prescribed without you and all I learned from you, Dr. Steve. My doctor had no idea this could be done. Lexi, thank you for that feedback. Yeah, so if you followed my work, I've written several blogs about de-prescribing, and these were follow-up steps to some emerging ideas. One idea was that taking thyroid medicine was the same as making thyroid hormone. And we're getting more and more data saying that it's not. The more your body can make, the better your health is. So ideally, you would make more by yourself. That's part of it. All along, many people have just wished they didn't need to be stuck on medicine. They wish their body could make more or make all of it, and just wanted that for the reasons of having total control over their own health. And I get that. For quite some time, though, I would tell people that it didn't make all that much of a difference. But now I've been seeing more data saying that it does make a difference. The other big perspective change has been the findings that many diagnoses that are treated with thyroid medication don't benefit from thyroid medication. So those pieces of data cause researchers to say, well, if the medicines don't help as much as we thought, and they're not the same as the body making it, what about all these folks that are on medicines that may not be benefiting or may not have been necessary for them? Can they come off? So there's been quite a bit of work on the idea of de-prescribing. And I would argue this is not just for thyroid medicine. Every single pill you take, you should think through, is this something I need to continue? What I find out happening is that pills get grandfathered in. You've taken it for a long time. Now you take it because you've taken it. You stay on it because you've been on it. But rather than assume you'll stay on things, I would say that on a regular basis, you should question everything and say, do I need this? Should I stay on this? Not just keep going on it because you've taken it, but it's almost like in the doctor's office, a lot of magazines will send free copies for quite a while. And what happens is, I'm not making this up here, this is totally true. They'll send free copies for 6 months or so, and then they'll start sending bills. And what happens is, everyone in the staff is like, oh yeah, we always have, I'm making this up, I'm not saying this magazine does it more than others, but oh yeah, I always see Time magazine here. So when the bill comes, like, I'll pay this because we get Time magazine, So we assume that things we do are things that we need to keep doing, but they're not. It's really great to question through and keep our pill counts as low as possible. More pills mean more ills. Kind of a cheesy rhyme, but just made that one up, and it's totally true. All right, a couple more good questions did come in advance. Let's grab a few more of these. This is an important one. I hear this one quite a bit. Molly asked this one. Dr. C, how can we improve T4 to T3 conversion? My free T3 and total T3 both vary below the lab range. Thank you. So Molly, this is a super important question. And there's some things that are important because they need to be addressed, and other things are important because they're often addressed in ways that are counterproductive. If you are around, if you are on, you're welcome to put more details about your findings. But what happens is, what does it mean when T3 is low? How where should T3 be? How important is this? What are the ramifications of that? And my views have evolved over time. Where I am currently, I do believe that many people subjectively feel better when T3 is part of their thyroid medication. I feel strongly about that. T3 can come from natural thyroid, it can come by itself in various forms. It can be made as a tableted manufactured medication, that's Seconal or liothyronine, the generic, or it can be made by compounding pharmacies. That's compounded T3. When someone does do better with it, I do encourage it from natural thyroid over the other forms. There's some reasons for that, but it can be a viable option. Now, who benefits from T3 from including T3? Well, I wouldn't argue that you can really draw that from someone's blood values. There's many people where their T3 levels are high or low, and it doesn't mean they need more or less. It's not indicative of that being a big issue. It can be a factor, though, of their body's intentional conversion. So some people don't convert as well for being low in certain micronutrients. The easiest step, Molly, if you're not already, the Thyroid Daily is a blend, and it's all the micronutrients needed for general thyroid metabolism. And that also includes steps towards conversion. So yeah, Thyroid Daily is a one pill once daily. I'll get a link to that for you all. It's an easy thing to add in. Um, here we go. But yeah, there are those who think that if their T3 is not in the highest end of the range, that they need more of that for varying reasons. I don't find that a strong argument. I don't think that there's as much evidence supporting that idea. But there certainly are many micronutrients that are critical for the body to use thyroid hormones properly, and that can be part of that. There are times too to where people can be lower in T3 because the body is trying to slow basal metabolic rate. We see that from some that have diets that are very low in carbohydrate, too low in protein, or too low in food overall. Now, going low in food short term during times of real aggressive or rapid weight loss can be totally valid for a while and not for too long. But in a prolonged way, all those things can change how the body uses that thyroid hormone. So, yeah, good one. Okay, let me go back and grab another live question here too. Then we'll get one or two more ones were sent in advance. So yeah, coming up on the holiday season, curious to hear about what you all do for the holidays. Which holiday you celebrate, how you celebrate. I'd love to hear just some thoughts from you all about how you all go about doing those things. I'm in northern Minnesota right now, and our son will come up and visit us and hang out, and we'll do a pretty standard Christmas celebration. We've got a tree and give some presents and make some food. We'll spend some time with my parents in the nursing home, probably the main Christmas with them, and we go to a church in a small town. We'll be there and attend an event. So that's what we have lined up. I'm also curious about how other people celebrate this time of year. Um, Related questions, other ones. So here's a great one from Melinda. Are blood tests a good way to check iodine levels? Yeah, Melinda, it's so logical that we talked about blood tests before for hormones, and we know about testing blood for iodine. I'm sorry, for iodine, for iron levels or for vitamin D levels. It's totally accepted and totally valid. And people are often getting their thyroid tested anyway, so why not check their iodine while they're at it? It's very logical. The problem is that iodine in your blood, it, it doesn't correlate with iodine inside your thyroid. What happens is that your body excretes iodine out your kidneys to keep levels low enough to be safe until the kidneys can't. So once you get so much iodine in your body that your kidneys can't get rid of any more, that's when blood levels start to go up. So blood iodine tests are actually really good tests for iodine in the range of toxicology. That's mostly useful for someone who's had an extremely high dose from like a medication like amiodarone or iodinated contrast. And many months down the road, they're wondering if that whatever bad thing is happening is still from all the iodine in their body. That's a great time for a blood serum test of iodine. But yeah, it's not a helpful tool for gauging your body's requirements for iodine. So a lot of people can do a serum test and be in a range that's called low. It doesn't mean they're low in iodine. It's just not correlated with that. So yeah, a lot of things about it are not intuitive, and that's one of them. Iodine testing in general, it's only helpful when someone has been in the time that I mentioned right there, if someone's had a whopping dose and not sure if it's gone yet, that's one. Or most commonly, if they're following a low iodine diet and they've been on it for a while and not seeing the results they were hoping for. Then iodine testing, specifically urinary iodine to creatinine ratio testing, can help them see if that it just wasn't going to help in general, or if there's still a lot of iodine in their bodies. What happens a lot is it can come from hidden sources, and someone may try to lower it, but not successfully lower it, and therefore not yet see the benefits. In the thyroid reset diet, I talked a lot about how to test for that. There's some free blogs online too, now that I think about it. And they'll talk about exact numbers to think about and how to test and when to test. So you can find that. Um, yeah, I want to grab a couple more here too. So, and I'm just watching comments coming in. Yeah, comments and questions. Here we go. All right. So the one I talked about before, can you recommend where to get stem cell thyroid? Sandy, yeah, great question, Sandy. It's not clinically available. There were some animal studies that were done in South America. It did seem to help, but the studies were done on animals that didn't have any signs of autoimmune thyroid disease. They surgically took their thyroid glands out and then gave them some stem cell precursors, and some did regrow some active thyroid tissue. So that's pretty cool. The drawback about humans is that most humans that have thyroid disease have autoimmune thyroid disease. And especially if they're talking about getting tiny amounts of cells back again, the concern is that the immune problems would simply harm those new cells and break them down and keep them from being biologically active. Office impact. So again, I'm looking for related questions and follow-up questions. Are you a fan of the Dutch test for adrenal fatigue testing? Yeah, office impact, great question. So a lot of people that I really respect do a lot of work with the Dutch test in terms of adrenal fatigue testing. So the adrenal testing, there's good data saying that there is a cortisol slope, meaning cortisol can be higher in the morning, lower at night, and that healthy slope correlates with a lot of good outcomes. A bad slope correlates with a lot of bad outcomes in terms of symptoms, diseases, and risks. So back to the idea of the network effect of tests, we've got many thousands of published studies on how salivary cortisol slope correlates with symptoms, diseases, health risks, longevity. We don't have that same body of data relative to the urinary tests. And a couple thoughts. Urine generally shows what's there in the hormone after it's metabolized by the body. There's usually some lag time. That's one big question about urinary tests and cortisol levels, is that there's probably some delay. So what you're seeing in the urine is not as much real time as what you might see in saliva. Blood tests are accurate too. The blood tests measure the total and the free fraction of cortisol, whereas the saliva sees primarily the free fraction. That's a little more useful. The blood tests also, getting a blood draw, that can change your cortisol levels, especially if you're going to get a blood draw like in the middle of the night when you're doing your nighttime test. That would totally throw off your levels. So that's where salivary tests are really helpful, is for adrenal function. Um, Questions about today's topic. So today's topic, we're talking about primarily thyroid health, hormones. We've had some great questions about hormone testing. Those are the recent points we covered in the most detail. Carrie just came on. Hey, Carrie, I covered your question a bit earlier, and check out the recordings that's there. And actually, someone else asked a similar related question asking about hormone testing. In short version, blood tests are actually great, and they're probably the least imperfect of all the available hormone tests. And they're generally covered by insurance, which is helpful. Follow-up comment. Yeah, Melinda, thank you. My practitioner wanted me to take iodine based on low blood levels. Melinda, I see that a lot, and it's really logical. I commend someone for saying, okay, I've heard that iodine can be a bad thing, that maybe people might need less, but I want to see exactly where my patients are and if it applies to them or not. It makes a lot of sense to want an individualized therapy, and I respect that. But they've done studies looking at low iodine diets and when they help thyroid disease. And several of the studies have taken people and said, okay, here's the ones that got better, here's the ones that didn't. How did their iodine tests predict that? And you might think that those who had high levels of iodine were the ones that benefited by lowering their iodine intake, and vice versa. Those that had low levels, it didn't help them as much or at all. But that just wasn't the case. The studies just have not shown that. So yeah, testing iodine levels do not predict who benefits by following the thyroid reset diet. Those who can stand to benefit are probably about 95% of people with Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, subclinical hypothyroidism. There's also data saying that it can be a good adjunctive therapy for those with Graves' disease or toxic nodular goiter. Uh, the 95%, so many studies show that roughly 70 to 80% people can fully reverse disease within a set time frame. But of those who don't fully reverse the disease, some weren't compliant and some improved but didn't yet reverse it. That's where the 95 to 97% comes from. That's basically of those who did follow the guidelines of the thyroid reset diet, how many either fully reversed disease or improved by 50% or greater. So pretty much everyone. And treating thyroid disease for 26 years now, I've never come across anything that's as consistently helpful. Anything that someone talks about as far as a therapy, natural, conventional, does it help 97% of people? that's that's pretty weird. And if I heard those claims, I would immediately want to go read those studies. And I have. It's a valid thing, and I wouldn't say that if there wasn't strong data to support it. Oh, here's a fun one. Cocoa Lady, my iodine was low. I incorporated iodine salt. My food, my levels went lower. Yeah, Cocoa Lady, I don't know if you were talking about serum levels or urinary levels, but that happens. So iodine tests are simply not particularly accurate, and they don't reflect nutritional status. And many people will see just that. Doctors will often test someone and find that they're low and have them add some in, and they remain low or they get lower. And so sometimes doctors just give up and move on, or they get more aggressive about the dosing. And if you dose someone with high enough amounts, eventually their bodies cannot get rid of the extra, and it starts to build up and become toxic. Then the levels start to get higher, but you also see negative changes to thyroid function. So yeah, it was a blood test. Okay, went from 40 to 32. That's a change that's quite small and it's well within the range of just randomness. So again, the most important thing, I'm not sure if everyone was talking about this earlier, but the blood marker has no relationship to the body's nutritional requirements for iodine. So yeah, just don't base it on that anyway. All right, let me take a look. Some more good questions coming in. Kind of pick through some of these. This is an interesting one. RR is asking, this is YouTube. I recently donated blood. TSH went from elevated to suppressed below the reference range. Thoughts on how blood donation affects thyroid function? RR, you got me on that one. I've not heard either way about short-term effects on blood donation and thyroid function. No idea. However, to see thyroid function change that dramatically, I would really guess that it was caught by luck that you happen doing a blood draw and testing it. I don't know if you've been fluctuating like that normally, or if that was a brand new thing. There are many times in which someone has very weird thyroid levels that don't show up on retests. So I would really encourage you to keep on watching over the coming months. And if you're bouncing around a lot, it's important to home in on a proper diagnosis as to why that's happening. As a generalization, when someone has radical change like you're describing, it's not common, but one of the more common reasons for that is something called thyroid binding inhibitory immunoglobulin. And that's an autoimmune process that blocks TSH from working properly and binding on the thyroid. That's one thing that could cause levels to go up and down very radically over short periods of time. But yet, please do get proper diagnosis. And everyone do know too that if there are things that come up that demand personal attention or more detailed insights on, you can consult with me and I can help troubleshoot and sort those things out. I'll drop a link up so people can see that. This is thyroidopinion.com. Yeah, and we can talk about that in person and sort those things through. I'm seeing some notes about Christmas stuff. So, Joanne, church on Christmas Eve, hosting my widowed neighbor and mother for Christmas dinner. Most of my son or daughter cooks family favorites, foods that bring back from my childhood. That's awesome. That sounds pretty similar to ours. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm gonna cook this year though, actually. I have to think that through. Get the menu together. A lot of Christmas menus are pretty similar to Thanksgiving menus, so there's that, but yeah, we'll see. Um, Lots of folks jumping on and lots more good questions. Let me grab 1 or 2 more here. Um, Rev Didi on Facebook, high 24-hour creatinine. I don't know the context. I don't know what you're asking exactly, if you had that present, um, by itself, or that was with an iodine test if we're talking about. If you do wanna put more detail, I'm happy to see if I can't help give some input on that one. I think I may have had 1 or 2 more prior questions queued up as well. Yeah, let's see. And I think I saw one related to this. Let me take a look real quick. I saw an earlier one on a related question. Here it was. This is from Jean. Parathyroid hormone at 80, vitamin D 50, calcium 65, today, would taking more calcium lower PTH? Yeah, Gene, great question. So the exact details are things that do take a bit more nuance. That's something I could consult on if need be. The calcium 65 doesn't quite make sense. That might be urinary units perhaps. And parathyroid does come in different units as well. There's standard and also international units. Big picture, vitamin D levels are pretty normal. When vitamin D is too high, that can cause false elevations of calcium and false suppressions of parathyroid hormone. If parathyroid hormone is elevated, it's almost never significantly elevated due to a lack of calcium. If it is elevated, either it's a marked vitamin D deficiency, which you don't have, or it's more a matter of hyperparathyroidism. So one of the parathyroids is overproducing. But calcium, what happens is that if the body is on the lower side in calcium, the elevations of parathyroid hormone are not that pronounced. You don't need that much extra parathyroid hormone to get more calcium into the bloodstream. So you wouldn't think about calcium being the first thing. We really think more about hyperparathyroidism as being a possibility, especially if vitamin D is normal. Good evening from the Netherlands. Rana, good evening back again. Nice for joining us. Um, and, okay, let me get one more that was sent beforehand too. This was a fascinating one. So Big Susie was asking, should I start manganese again? I started taking beginning of the year 10 milligrams. TSH went from 2 to 5, stopped after reading your blog. TSH has dropped back down to 2. Not sure if I try a lower dose. Yeah, Big Susie. So manganese, there's a lot of data saying that if you get too much of it, it can slow your thyroid. Now, I can't think of why you would need to go back your dose. I've intentionally either kept it out or kept it very low in all the products that I make because too much of that can be a real problem for people. And the amounts that we get normally are not a bad thing. Small amounts are fine, but it's something that we just don't see people deficient in anymore. There's no known cases of manganese deficiency, and there's no real clear benefits of extra manganese. All nutrients have a point of we need some, and there's a point where we can get too much. And there's also a big difference in some nutrients in terms of how commonly people can be low in them and how commonly people have plenty already. But manganese is one to where we get enough, no one's really deficient. There's not a lot of clear benefits from taking more. Now, there's countless things manganese is involved with in the body. There's countless chemical reactions it participates with. And I do see many that they conflate things that manganese helps with more manganese will make that work better. And the one doesn't follow the other. So if someone were somehow manganese deficient, something like forming connective tissue might not work as well. They might have more joint erosion if they were manganese deficient. But once someone is manganese sufficient, more manganese won't give you better joints or less pain. Oddly, many examples to where being above a healthy threshold with a nutrient creates the exact same problems that being deficient in a nutrient can cause. So yeah, I wouldn't push you to go back to a higher dose of it again by any means. The thyroid daily, for example, I left manganese out completely. There is data saying that too much can slow the thyroid. And every single nutrient, every vitamin, every mineral you've ever heard of, there's a special story that's different for those with normal thyroid function. And that's why I've made distinct products because the types and the amounts of nutrients in just common vitamins, they just don't make sense for those with thyroid disease. And this is a great example that you bring up. Um, let's see. I have one more question. That was the last one that I had queued up in advance. Let me go back to here. Okay, so there's several good ones. I gotta pick and choose. This is tricky. Yeah, yeah, quick follow-up on RR. Yeah, I was thinking blood donation increases metabolic rate to make new blood cells. RR, it increases the formation of new blood cells, but not by changing overall base metabolic rate. So never heard that affecting it. So another blood yeah, keep watching that and know that thyroid changes relative to TSH might take 3 months to really play out completely. So watch it over the coming months. Even if your this Friday is normal, still keep an eye on that over the coming months and see how it settles out. Um, Coco Lady, I'm in perimenopause. My thyroid doctor's been treating it. Do you suggest seeing a hormone specialist for AGON, low PHA, low testosterone, adrenal stress? You know, Great question. If there are key symptoms of perimenopause with those things, then you should be addressed by someone who is skilled in treating those. If that's I don't know if that's part of your thyroid doctor's training or not. So there's many doctors that treat thyroid disease, and then there are endocrinologists, and then there's naturopathic endocrinologists. So naturopathic endocrinologists, there are a very small group of them, but they're trained in treating hormones of various types safely and naturally, and also with good conventional approaches when they are indicated. So naturopathic endocrinologists can do a good job of thyroid care and also hormones of menopause. So that would be my first recommendation as far as a type of doctor for you. Um, Easy one. Maritza, how do I submit a question ahead of time? Yeah, Maritza, so the days we do office hours live, we'll put up a posting and just saying, hey, coming up later on, we'll do this, and just drop questions in the comments underneath that. I'll keep an eye out for those. Okay. Um, I think that's what we got. That's what we got today. So next week we'll be kicking into the holiday season. So I'll be back 2, 3 weeks out. It'll be a little bit, but yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful holidays. Thanks to those who shared some of their holiday rituals. It's a great time. The most important part of it is, of course, connecting with your family and with your loved ones. That's what matters more than anything. So, yeah, enjoy this time and take care of your health along the way. And I'll see you guys real soon. In the meantime, jump on social media, questions, comments. I'll keep an eye on things the best I can. And there's always new things coming out and a lot of exciting stuff for this coming new year. We're going to do, coming up January 9th, we're going to do our biggest group reset of the year. I really believe that your body's cortisol cycles, your body's organ fat are the two things that affect your health more than anything you can imagine. They're so huge. We're going to do a big group reset January 1st. This will benefit the adrenal, the metabolism, the thyroid, the basis for all of those things. Makes sense of all of that. So this will be the main month of the year. And new year, new you. This is a chance to go deep and fulfill the New Year's resolutions, make them really count, and get a head start on that. So yeah, hope you can join us and stay tuned. A lot of information coming out on social media. And those who watch our newsletter, we'll have a lot of insights there and some great ways to help make that challenge happen. All right, take care. I'll see y'all really soon.